What if I told you in today's video we're going to be talking about creating an amazing edible pest-free garden, disease-free, that just keeps on giving. Now if that interests you, keep on watching this video and this live show if you're here. We have the rerun, and so it's just awesome. Thank you for being here. If you're new to my channel, my name is Marty Ware. I'm the host here of the Marty's Garden Show, and on this channel we teach organic gardening, worm farming, composting, regenerative practices to help you grow an amazing edible garden at home. And today we're talking about regenerative homesteading. Now, the practice really comes from organic farming and permaculture and other systems that have been integrated together. And I'm putting together these new systems to teach you that I'm creating here in my new space here at Marty's Garden. Now, if you haven't been watching the channel, we've got some links and things down below. You can go and check on the channel all the recent videos and you can see where we're up to. Now, regenerative gardening is something that hasn't really been spoken about, and hopefully I'm not too far forward into this because sometimes I get a bit far forward and then the timing isn't right, but I know that it's happening with regenerative farming, right? And so we can actually put these practices onto small homesteads, small urban farms, little backyards, or a nice sized backyard like myself. Now, I've got some images here to show you today. So we're going to pull up the first one. This was taken yesterday. Now, you may have seen this little video. It came out in the shorts yesterday of Karen patting our chicken Fatso. She is a wonderful chook, and she's the nicest one out of all of them, we believe. And she's probably the most clever as well and loves a scratch. And you can see Karen, she's in our regenerative chicken space. It's fenced off, and thank you guys that helped support this fence to come to fruition through the buy me a coffee link there. Karen's been giving him some water, letting him move around, and they actually are cleaning up the weeds in that area, getting the grass down, and then turning over those leaves and mulch back into a good soil. So we're building the soil upon basically a clay pan there, really. The soil's really heavy clay where I am, but they're doing a great job cleaning up slugs and snails and every little bad insects that we don't want to have. And we have the portable fence so we can move them around with the season or wherever we want them to be. So we'll just move on to the next image. We've got a few photos here of my place, or where that's coming to, and some other images and videos and things that I've gathered online to help you with your journey if you're interested in moving into regenerative practices on your homestead or in your backyard. Now remember, this can be done in a very small space. I did this down in Camden Haven, where I ran my worm farm and composting business around the side of the house. Had the tiniest little space with fruit trees, herbs, veggies, worm farm things going, and even made a micro farm there. So anything is possible, even in a small space. You can have potted gardens and worm farms and composting systems and still be doing very well in this type of system. So it's all just about scale and what size you have. You could have a big farm, little backyard, big backyard like mine, and yeah, can make a really big difference. All right, so we've got some images here, and hopefully these images are going to come out well. Excuse me if I make any boo-boos with the software here, but we're doing the best we can. So you can see I've got my garden is about it's nearly 5 months old now. The zucchini's coming on really great. It's sort of down the side of a bale garden there, which we'll show you in a little while, which is another regenerative practice that you can do in your backyard to build soils and stop back-breaking, digging and things like that. The chickens there are in their tractor, and we'll give you, I think I've got a better image of the chicken tractor coming up, and we'll talk more about that. But they can be moved around and wheeled around in the tractor to be underneath a fruit tree for a little while, to dig up a space where we're going to put the next the next bale garden or another veggie garden, or plant some food and things like that. They'll fertilize, clean up the space, get rid of slugs and snails and things, and it'll be like little tractors in a way. I love that terminology, the little tractor. Okay, so just make sure I've got this here, and we're moving to the next scene here. Here you can see, yep, they're moving around. They're not always in the tractor. And this space, we fenced that off for a little while. I got in there with a mower after they cleaned through a bit, mulched it down for them. They got in, ripped some weeds up, grabbed some of the little moths. We've got a little moth population going on at the moment from all the rain. And it's funny when you see one of them grab something really good, the other one chases them and goes, hey, you got something good? Well, I want to have that too. So, yep, they are out free ranging as well. And at times they'll be behind the fence, and other times they'll be in the portable coop. But the whole thing about regenerative practices is having a happy, healthy animal and giving them as much fresh food and change of diet as possible. And you can see here the girls, they're really diving in, and they get on the edge of the grass where the seed is, and they pull there like you see them go brrrr along the grass seeds. It's absolutely unreal to watch. Some of the weeds they stay away from, but eventually once they sort of like dig around it and things like that, I just go in and snip the weed down, or I mow it, and then they go through and turn it over again and mulch it back into the ground. Then we move them to another location. So yeah, they're pretty happy chickens, as you can see, and we get 5 eggs pretty much nearly every day. You know, sometimes we get between 3 and 5 a day when they're doing really well. Okay, so there they are back in the tractor again. I just want to give you a look at that. Now, I purchased this through Facebook Marketplace. I'm pretty sure it was just homemade, but it's been really well done. It's made out of aluminium sheeting, and at the moment it's warming up, so they're underneath the trees, and we're moving them around, and you'll see more sort of like in the images that are coming up if they're there. But you can see like there's the 2 lids that flip up, so we can get into the back part where the back lid flips up. We can grab the eggs, they perch in there. Down the middle there's also a little down pipe, and that has a little sort of water thing in it that actually, when they drink at water level, it keeps filling it up. And then there's a top lid at the front and a top gate at the front, so we can open it up easy. We can feed them from the top or let them out for the side. There's handles on the side with wheels, and so that pulls up on either side, and then we can wheel it around to where they need to go. So they're very happy chickens. As I said, they're in and out of different areas all the time, and not always stuck in this portable coop. But at times in winter, it's really good having them in there. And as summer sort of comes out and it's warmer, they just get more range for free ranging and stuff like that. Like I said, I've shown you in that video there. So if you just come into the show now, a little bit late, welcome. We're talking about regenerative homesteading, which we do with worm farming, chickens, using animals, building up soils, composting, mulching, all that type of stuff, and bringing in all the good bugs and the birds and the frogs and all that type of stuff. So we're following regenerative practices and permaculture practices to make this happen. All right, so let's move on to the next image here. Another part of my regenerative homestead is my worm farms. Now, worm farming is fairly simple to do. It can be a little bit tricky if we overcomplicate it. Now, I have left some links down below if you're struggling with worm farming in the description there, and you can actually access my worm farming ebook, Starting a Worm Farmer Beginner's Guide, or you can actually become a worm wrangler. If you become a worm wrangler number 3, you get access to all the videos there, and teaches you everything you need to know about worm farming and more, even right down to using the castings to start seedlings and building big underground worm farms in raised beds and things like that. So right through, and making teas and making worm drenches and all that stuff. So yeah, worm farming, absolutely love it. It plays a big role in my regenerative practice here. I make all my own fertilizers, and then as they breed up, they get released into raised beds and bale gardens and things like that. So hopefully you're enjoying the show so far. What I'm going to do is I'll go back to here, and I need a little drink of water. As we're running a live show, you can't edit things like this, but that's the beauty of it. And I've got my Rooster Cup. It's a pretty cool cup. We had a whole lot of all the different animals, but I didn't bring all the cups with me. when we moved house, it's just some stuff we had to get rid of. Had too much stuff, so just kept the Rooster Cup, and I love that cup. It's a great cup. Anyway, we've still got some more videos and things to show you, some more images and stuff. But what I want to do for the moment is drag some people across and say hello to you this morning, and give you all a big welcome. And so here we go, Mrs. Wobbles. Good morning, Mrs. Wobbles. Thank you for being here today. Lovely to see you. And good morning, Deborah Jane Dixon. Now, if you're new to the channel and you've just come in, I'm Marty Ware. I'm an agricultural horticulturist, and I use regenerative practices, have been for many years, teaching worm farming, composting, things along those lines, permaculture and stuff. And I blend them all together to make these gardens, these vegetable gardens that get very productive over time, become less work, they become systemized, they bring in all the birds, the animals and things like that. Everything's doing the work for you and produces food and a lot of beautiful harmony in your place. So if that's for you, stay watching the show because we got more coming up for sure. Mrs. Wobbles, there must be a big garden nearby because the bees have stopped visiting. How do I self-pollinate cucumbers and tomatoes? Great question. What we're going to do is we move towards the Q&A more towards the end, Mrs. Wobbles, once I sort of run through everything. But I'll just let you know for now, you just get a little, just tap on the flowers and they will self-pollinate inside, or just give the plant a bit of a shake. So anyway, yep, if you've got any questions, hang on a little bit longer and we'll move into the Q&A further down the line. So, all right, let's keep on rolling here. We'll see where we're up to. I think we had the worm farm there, and then now we've got, all right, so here's my larger worm farm system. Now, this is where the chickens are right now. They're penned off in a new space, and this was there when I moved in, and it was full of weeds and everything like that. There was weeds covering the whole thing, and up to about to the height. There's 3 feet of weeds in the back. So we have been doing quite well in regenerating this space, and every nasty weed that lives on the north coast of Australia is in my yard. Believe it or not, that's what I've had to deal with and still dealing with now. And the chickens are playing a big role in helping me deal with these weeds as well, and using the weeds in a way to actually build the garden. So a lot of chop and drop, where just the weeds are growing and just mowing over the top of them, just letting them sit on the ground, rot back into the ground, and getting them before they seed as best we can. You can probably see some nasty weeds there in that image if you know your weeds. There's some really, that purple flower one, the morning glory, what a nightmare. It's all through the lawn, all through the side of the fences, in the neighbours, coming through the side. We got a big battle to go on with that, but if you don't stress out about it and just look at it and go, okay, you can't compost it, you got to bin it or throw it somewhere in the sun where it just dries out. And yeah, it's scary stuff, that one. So we've got quite a lot of weeds in here to deal with, but the chickens are helping me. We're composting some of them, we're mowing them back in and letting them sit on the ground, chop and drop permaculture style, and just building up the soil profile over time. So it is a bit of a process, but this worm farm here, so I'll show you the next spot, is being built out. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'd know that I left hundreds of thousands of worms at my micro farm, well, where I was selling the compost, and only brought 2,000 with me. And so we've started populating this space here now to get our worm castings, build up populations, and maybe look at the possibility of micro farming again into the future. So I'm hoping within about 6 months to a year, this whole bed here will be full of composting worms. But I've got a fair bit of work to do, and we should have tens of thousands in there hopefully by the end of the summer. So I'm looking probably 50,000 is what we're hoping, but we don't know yet. We really don't know. So the first bedding is underneath this blanket here, underneath this hessian blanket. If you follow my show, you would know that I love using hessian as a bedding as a cover for the worms. There's compost underneath, some cow manure and some food. I released about 1,000 in there, and then I put another whole lot of cocoons in there as well. The only thing is they can spread out a bit, so I've got to feed them underneath the blanket and keep them zoned up so they rub against each other and breed and things like that, and don't scatter out too wide. All right, so they're in there, and that's a part of the regenerative practice is composting, and then feeding the worms to the compost, and then getting some of the chicken manure as well and putting that into here, and some cow manure and things like that, and building and creating my own soils and fertilizers and stuff, so I don't have to spend any money. The only things I've really been buying is a bit of the mulchy sort of stuff, the sugarcane and some satira grass, I think it's called. Right, so we'll move into the next image. This is some people composting. This is really cool. And people don't realize that, we have so much waste going out into our bins and things, and we really need to just find ways to recycle this waste and get it back onto the land, back into the ground. There's so many beneficial nutrients in these things, and it's great for feeding the compost worms. It's great for putting back and building soils up and things like that. So composting needs to play a huge role in regenerative practices such as regenerative homesteading, right? We just need to compost everything. Like this guy, after he harvests his cucumber there, he looks pretty happy harvesting his cucumber. I don't know where that's been filmed. I got that from somewhere else. But all these plants that you see after these cucumbers are finished, where then all the minerals and everything that we've been feeding it worm castings and compost, we compost that plant again. Everything stays on site when we're using regenerative practices. It could go into a worm farming and have a composting system, or could actually be just chopped up with some snippers, bang, 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 and it be used like a chop and drop system. You know what I mean? So, excuse me, itchy nose there. Live show coming in. So we're thinking about using everything that's being on site that we have in the house and lying around the garden and coming in from when we do our grocery shopping, not going back out again. It needs to be recycled and as less as possible thrown into the green bins. I know sometimes we're in a rush and some things are going to go into the bin. We just can't help it. But we do the very best we can, and if we start regenerating these things, then we do much better, and we can actually regenerate our homestead much faster than you would believe, because the mathematics behind it is we actually building and building up because nothing's going out, right? We're bringing stuff in, inputs in, very little's going out. We're eating most of it, and then we're either feeding it to the chickens, feeding it to the worm farms, composting it, or even then like fish heads and meat and things like that. We're digging holes and burying it down and planting on top of it. So we can keep going with those things. All right, so let's, hopefully I'm not losing my spot here. We've got some new people rolled in, so we will say g'day. And sorry, I can't pronounce that. Ilga Kolnis. Hopefully I got that right. If I didn't, excuse me. But g'day, Marty, from my evolving garden in Helensvale. Well, thank you so much for saying g'day. And Helensvale, mid-north coast, is that right? Is that where we are? And welcome. Brian Kendall, hello from Tennessee. G'day, mate. Lovely to see you here, Brian. Thanks so much. Janine from Brisbane. Hi, how are you? And Philip McCullum. Hi, Marty. How's the new gardens going? They're going absolutely great, going gangbusters, and just really stoked to be into about 5 months. So we've gone through the winter, then sort of into spring now. And look, to be honest, it hasn't been the best growing season. It's been very, very wet with the La Nina, and that's why I produced that live show on the Thursday the other day talking about the weather. It's just been absolutely mental, and so things have just been haven't been so easy. But it's amazing what you can do if you work with the seasons and you work with what's going on, and then you can still get food out onto the kitchen plate. Now, if you've got any questions, we're going to have a Q&A more towards the end, and so if you've asked anything now, please just ask it more towards the end, and we'll get into it. We're not too far away from the Q&A. And this one we will answer just now. But yeah, Q&A more towards the end. Is there anything organic you don't put in your compost? You can put everything in. Just be aware that things like onion and citrus just take longer to break down. And if you've got huge amounts of them, then I would sort of more dig them into the garden, things like that. But yeah, Or you can use your orange peels like for firelighters and stuff like that. So yeah, just be aware. But like meats and things like that, it's different ways to deal with it. We've been creating some content on that. We're going here, Helens Vale on the Gold Coast. Oh, cool. And Wabi Sabi Permaculture Farm. Good morning, mate. I'm sure this is right up your alley. We've talking about regenerative practices. I follow a lot of permaculture principles here on my little place, which could possibly one day turn into a micro farm. At the moment, we're just homesteading and becoming more self-sufficient, sharing the journey here. And I'm educated in agriculture and horticulture, so I think I've got a fair bit to share and quite a bit of practice here going ahead in the future. Oh, hi Marty, caught you live. Yes, Tali Lee. Welcome. That's unreal to see you here. Love the little photo you got there with the goose. That's really cool. And so, yeah, if you've come in late, we're talking about regenerative practices on the homestead. So that could be anything to do with just a small place where you've got a potted gardens and some little raised beds and things where you can worm farm and compost, and keeping your inputs into the place and then reusing them, recycling them, turning them into fertilizers, and creating something that just gets better and better over time. Like I said, like a fine wine. And if you look back at a lot of my older videos in the other place, you can see that, perfect example of that, my little permaculture garden that regenerated quite well, started on sand, with exactly the same principles that I'm doing here, except we're on clay, and I can go more to scale. So really, we're just doing a bigger version of what we had down the coast. But whether we move into micro farming, that still will be something that we'll look at in the future. Okay, what do you feed worm farms if all kitchen scraps go to poultry for a well-rounded, nutrient-rich diet? Now, I keep saying to everyone, please Q&A more towards the end, guys, because I want to keep rolling. But because I have this list of comments beside me, and if I miss things and things like that, mate, just makes it a bit harder for the show. But I will answer this. What do you feed your worm farms if all kitchen scraps go to poultry? Well, I get the manure, cow manure from the back paddock. I also get some of the chicken manure from the coops, and I age that a little bit and put that in there. I throw in carbon, so the sugarcane, a little bit of like wood chip stuff, and occasionally, like we'll have some bananas and some fruit around, that'll go in as well. So the chickens always don't get it all, but I've got to make sure that we don't sort of like overdo it with the chickens too much, because then the worms sort of miss out, and that can be a bit of a problem. And I have done that before. Oh, that is my beautiful duck. She is very big. I'm sure she looks great. I just love that. Anyway, let's keep going back here to where we were on the images here. I just got to make sure where I'm caught up now. So that was the composting. Right, so this woman here, she's obviously in a permaculture or organic farm or garden, big garden. She's got a nice big harvest. And what I love about this image is they're connecting to the land. And you can see that it's not just full-on hardcore monoculture of just one sort of plant growing, and then, and then you've got to go in for chemicals and sprays and things like that. So it's more of the type of garden that sort of, well, not to say companion planting, which may be some companion planting here, but you've got, tomatoes growing together, different lettuces, cabbages, herbs, things like that, all blended in together and confusing the pests and creating a lot of habitat. And so we have habitat that's up high for the birds that like to be up high. Some birds like to be down the middle, like finches and wrens and things like that. So we create habitat for them and habitat for the good and bad insects. So the good insects will get eaten by the bad insects. So we need to have both. So there's a bit of food around. We've got little skinks and little lizards running through all these type of systems. And she's connecting to the land here. You can see she's got her gumboots on. She's getting in, doing a harvest, and it looks, it looks like a pretty good harvest to me. And you can see this photo hasn't been set up so much like some of the images that you see. So I really love that connection to the land and understanding that you can regenerate it and it can just get better and better all the time. Like I said, like a fine wine. And you can see here in this image, young girl harvested a whole lot of different colours of carrots, and it's a connection with the land. So we're bringing the younger crew in to go, hey, the food just doesn't always come on the kitchen, the Woolies and the food supermarkets and things like that. We can grow it, we can connect to it, and we can create our own beautiful fresh food sustainably and organically at home, and regenerate the land at the same time by providing habitat for all these beautiful, lovely creatures that live around us that take care of our garden at the same time. So once we set these up, it's a win-win. They actually are a lot less work than a lot of gardens and people think. It's just about we need to be caretakers of it. And once we become caretakers of it, that the animals and everything will actually help us caretake it at the same time. So we're not thinking like a destructive warfare of going in and chemicals and sprays and things like that. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times when we need to go in and spray and things when we've got infestations, especially in the beginning stages, when we haven't set up all the insect populations, we haven't got the birds and the frogs in and things like that, can be a bit trickier. But just understand that when you do go in, even with organic fertilizers and things, they will kill most of the good bugs as well. So what I do at the beginning stage is, if plants aren't doing good and they got pests on them and stuff, if I don't see like a lady beetle, example, my rose bush that come up, it must have been here from the people before, had some aphids on the end of their head, and I saw a lady beetle in there. She ate a few, didn't eat all of them. I chopped the head off and I threw it over the fence so the aphids didn't keep breeding up. So in the beginning stages, sometimes we need to pull plants out, bin plants, things like that, and then just keep building out and building out. And you know, usually about you lose about 10 to 20% at the beginning stages of our crops, and then that becomes less and less over time, and then we just don't grow the things that don't work. All right, so if you're enjoying the show, please give us a big thumbs up, because we've got 11 thumbs up, 15 people watching at the moment, and well, I just watching this, a new person just arrived, so we've got 12 people, 12 thumbs up. And, you know, that really helps the algorithm here on YouTube and shows that you're enjoying the show, you're getting engaged with it, and you're getting value from it. And we want to hear very soon if you're putting in any regenerative practices. What are you doing to make your place better? Are they getting more frogs in? Are you building some frog ponds? Are you building like portable chicken coops like I am? Have you built a space where maybe on a chicken run where actually the plants can actually grow along the side of the chicken run, so the chickens can stick their head through the fence and maybe grab a bit of like a bug or something like along those lines. You can grow up along the side of the fence, maybe some tomatoes or things where they don't eat the leaves and stuff like that. They might grab the odd tomato, but not many. And you know, like we use the side of the coop to grow our plants in. I actually grew a big fruit tree inside one of our coops once, and yeah, it grew into a massive big tree and grew out through the roof and out through the top, and it was just unreal. And the chickens did all that work to grow that tree. Now in this image here, we can see them free ranging. They're getting out, happy, healthy chickens eating, you know, the natural foods around. Now, people, I checked a Facebook video of mine a little while ago, and it's shown my chickens free ranging and scratching around and stuff like that. And they look really hungry because they're just really getting into it. And someone wrote down the bottom, feed your chickens. And I'm like, don't you understand? You feed your chickens, right? Only enough so they go out and then they do the rest of the work. You only need to, look, the grains from chickens is a very new thing. When I was a young boy, my pop, well, just before I was born, they had chickens. Now, in those days, they didn't buy grains and things like that. Grains for chickens is very, very new. People don't really realize this. But basically, the chickens were designed to be around, and you just threw your scraps out. And then they just ate the scraps, cleaned up the scraps. You didn't have composting systems and bins and all this type of things, green bins going out. And so it was the chickens that did all that. And then, you know, they would lay a few eggs. They didn't have to lay an egg every day. And then they just hunted around the garden and around wherever they wanted to go. And, you know, we made sure, we took care of them, put them into the coop at night and let them out in the morning and that type of thing, and did the best thing we could. But they weren't always fed grains. This whole grain thing, it isn't always needed. And there's some people that have got big composting farms and they don't feed their chickens any grains. They just free range through the compost piles and they just live happy and they lay eggs, and they actually, their byproduct for their compost companies is the eggs, right? So this is actually happening in regenerative farming systems. And I'm going to be building something like that into the future if we get into the micro farming. If not, we'll have a smaller system for them to jump around in. And so they dig up, they get worms, they get caterpillars, they get different seeds out of the grass. They get everything that they need. And, you don't always have to supplement them with that. Unless, you get heavy winters and cold top periods and things when things aren't growing, then obviously you can supplement them more. So my concept is to supplement them less and less over time. And then in winter, when there's less food around, give them a bit more. And then in summertime, back off and get them eating more healthy foods. All right, so let's pull across some of these things here. And you can fire away with the Q&As. We're pretty close to getting through to the end of the thing here. We're one more slide to go. Okay, let's... Mrs. Wobbles. Yep, the kids love finding the baby snow peas to eat. And they will eat all the greens. That is so cool. I used to sneak into my neighbour's yard when I was a little kid. Lived in New Zealand for a while. And I used to go stealth mode with someone else. I can't remember who it was. We'd go on our hands and paws into the pea crop and eat the peas right on dark. And I reckon they must have seen us doing it. We thought we were so sneaky, getting in and going, oh, yum, 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 yum. And so very fond memories of eating the first peas, and then come back and tell my mum and dad, go, oh man, you guys should be growing these peas. They're unreal, these fresh peas. And they'd just be laughing at me, going, what have you been doing? I go, oh, nothing. Anyway, Tali L, we have a massive bull ant's nest that want to poison but haven't. Just found them killing the cabbage grubs of my broccoli. I'll leave them be until they start coming in the house and bite the kids. Yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one, the bull ant's nest. So I know that certain types of ants will nest in certain areas and things like that, and so it's all about their sort of habitat. So certain types of ants, like the big bulljoe, they need more of a foresty sort of environment. The red hoppers, which we've got around here as well, they more like a forestry environment as well. As when you open up the space, they don't like it so much. So maybe look at a way of changing their habitat space a little bit, and then they just move their nest and move on. But without having a really good look at it, it's a bit hard to tell. But good luck with it, and wishing you all the best with it. Bird bath to attract native birds. Yeah, for sure. It's funny, I've done that before, and my neighbours have had them, and then they've all gone to the neighbours' one and not come to mine. I'm like, why are you coming to my bird bath? My bird bath's just as cool as your one. And they just get in habits and things like that. And so sometimes you can put a bird bath in, they come, and other times they don't. That's just my experience. Got to be a bit careful with native bees. The Australian native bee with bird baths, the reflective water, they drown in it. So if you've got Australian native bees around, be a bit careful with that. You're going to have more of a pondy environment for them. And the next part, I find eggshells around some plants attract some birds that pick up the pests. Okay, cool. Anything that we can do to build up our natural environment actually, helps, with that sort of like the systems of cleaning up pests and things. Now, I'm still building out my space, so, I've got some native trees and things that are going in, and some grevilleas and lemon myrtles and different things that the birds will come in and feed on and create habitat more for the insects and stuff. But at the moment, there's still some open spaces, and the currawong's coming in and grabbing my yellow tomatoes. And he just bang, he got such a strong beak. I don't know how they do it without even pulling it off the vine, and just bang and cut it in half. So I've got to plant some more basil and different things around the outside of them to get rid of the eye, distract the eye to my tomatoes from those large black birds at the moment. But other than that, I'm happy to have them round. They let me know when the snakes are around, and they'll follow a snake in the backyard if there's a snake, and they have a certain call, and you can hear that and go out and check. I've already removed 2 big carpet pythons from my backyard. Threw one over the fence the other day. He was still a bit cold. I think he'd come out of a hole in my little rainforest area there, and was sitting on the mulch, only about maybe 6 meters away from the chickens. And I was like, oh, well, you're not staying there. And then she went back into the hole and had to dig out all the bromeliads. And then I had to got my fork and I hosed her down to make sure she was cold so she'd get too strikey. And she didn't like that too much. And then because she was quite cold, I was able to sort of just use the garden fork and sort of move her along until I got to the fence. And she was about 6-7 foot, really heavy. I could only just pick her up and then threw her over the fence into the back paddock with the cows. And said, on your way, you're not having any of my chickens or my eggs, but you're welcome to be nearby. Just don't stay near my chickens. Because they'll steal the eggs, and they love eating chickens, these big pythons. They'll even take a small cat, believe it or not, and they grow pretty big around here. And we've got some forests and stuff nearby and places where they like to be around. But because of the floods, I don't think we're going to have too big a problem with snakes this season. They usually like the heat, and there's been some problems with them. But when there's pythons around, there's obviously blacks and browns, and mostly brown snakes. So we've got to be careful for those. Charlie L. We have too many birds. They're destroying my garden, but I love them. It's hard to shoo them away. I guess in certain systems, we got to watch it, because there are certain birds that are detrimental, like the brush turkey here. We don't have any around here too close to me, but I've had them before, and they're native, and they're like a big giant chicken, and they make so much damage. I've got to put up netting and things like that. So, sometimes we have to work in with them, but it's all about a balance. When we've got an overbalance of one that's sort of creating problems, then that's a problem. We've got to work a way to restore balance if we can. And nature will sometimes do that on its own eventually. In the city areas, I find it's a little bit trickier because you'll get birds that aren't so much native to the area, and then they can be a bit of a pest at times too. So yeah, just work with it and go with it. Do the best you can, but they are nice to watch. Brian Kendall, we have 14 chickens eating and working a cover crop for the winter. Awesome, man. I bet you they'd be great in there. Unreal to hear that. Thanks so much for sharing, Brian. And 14 is quite a lot. They'd be doing quite a lot of work. People don't realise that we don't need huge amounts of them to get quite a lot done. I found chickens can get a bit lazy. The less you feed them, the more they scratch and forage. Yeah, so that's what I was saying before. This lady was saying feed them, and I'm saying no, don't. You want them to be in the spot working where they are, and you want them to be really sort of like looking and feed them. So I feed mine in the morning, in the afternoons, and sometimes only feed them once a day if I think they've had a really good forage around. And I'm just building up systems for them. So eventually when we have the big composting systems, they'll be in there working and turning over that compost and grabbing all the food out of there and stuff like that. So, really that sort of native food that's in the grasses and the greens and under the mulch and things is much better for them than just feeding them grain, I got an example for you when I'll go back to the video here where they're sort of cruising around in the grass. I love that. So I took care of an avocado farm many years ago. I managed it, and then I ended up living on there for a little while again when I wasn't working there. New owners, taking care of one of the houses there just for about 3 months, and they had chickens, but they never let them out. They're always in a penned up area, and we had to feed for them, stuff like that. So what I used to do is he would say, oh, just have all the eggs. You don't get many eggs, I think there was about a dozen chooks. And I was like, oh, okay, righto. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's a few eggs. And I'm like, man, I'm going to let them out. I'm just going to let them out around the avocado area. And they can't really make much of a mess and things. We'll call them back in, get them back in at night, and make sure they're locked up. And we'll let them out for, 3 or 4 hours a day. And all of a sudden, we started getting heaps of eggs, and I was throwing in kitchen scrap waste, but they never got before either. And I remember we had too many eggs then, and I first said, oh, well, I'll go down to the owner's house. And I dropped off, I had a big carton of eggs for them. And he goes, where'd you get all the eggs? And I said, oh, they're just from the chickens. He goes, what do you mean, just from the chickens? And I said, yeah, this is how many eggs we got. He goes, no. He goes, that's not possible. That can't happen. I said, yeah, this is very possible. I've been letting them out, and I've been feeding them kitchen scraps as well, and they're doing really good. And he's just shocked horror in his face that we got a dozen eggs in only took about 3 weeks for them to change their whole system to be laying an egg each a day. And it was just unreal. It's unreal to see. It was just so good to see that guy. And he looked at me in shock, and I just said, "There you go. I'll see you later," and walked out. And these old cocky farmers, mate, I'm telling you, they're hard to deal with. They don't like dealing with anything sort of like along these permaculture practices and things like that, where it just changes the mindset, what's in the old books and things, and they just don't like it. And they always sort of live in a bit of shock, And I've had that happen to me quite often, especially in my younger years when I just finished studying agriculture and hort at TAFE, and moving into sort of these organics. And I studied organics as one of my subjects, and I just absolutely loved that. And I lived around, a lot of my friends were permaculturists and things like that in that time, and it was early days for permaculture in the area. And we have one of the biggest permaculture farms in Australia here, not very far from where I live. All right, so there they are, cruising around, having a good old time. Let's go to the last image here. And this is, again, connecting the land. I think she's grabbing some olives, right? I think they're olives. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're a nice big harvest here, connecting to the land, getting your own food, and just smiling and happy. You just can't beat that, can you, right? It's just unreal. It's just unreal. I just love sharing stuff like that. All right, let's go here to our next comments. Now, if you're enjoying the show and you're getting a lot of good value out of it, please give me a big thumbs up. And if you're watching the rerun later, share this video. I'm doing the very best I can to bring these shows to you a bit more dynamically than just listening to my my talking head here. I'm hoping that you get a lot of value out of it, you get a lot of inspiration, and that you can learn not only from me, but from the people, the community here that are sharing in the comments area, either in the reruns or, as we go live. Oh, excuse me. So since I put myself on camera, it starts to burp. Excuse me. All right, Janine. My new worm farm had quite a lot of tiny flies, fruit flies for a little bit. Do you know what may have caused that? Too much food, maybe. Yes, too much food generally is the case. So you just back off on the food, put more carbon in and things like that. Now, I do cover in the Worm Wranglers members area. We go into that a lot more deeply, and also in my ebook. They're in the links down below, and we sort of cover that quite well. And if you're into supporting this channel, there's 3 versions. So there's like a $3 a month. I think there's $10 a month where you get access to a couple of courses. Then for the biggest one, the Worm Farms Wranglers, you get 3, you get everything. But a lot of people just go for the $3 a month one. And that really, when I start getting some decent numbers, I think we're around about 37 members or something at the moment. And the goal is to reach 100 to sort of like get to that level where we need to be. So if you don't mind becoming a worm wrangler and you want to get some more value out of it, I think in the future we're going to be looking at ways we can maybe do have a live show just for members or something like that. And that could be really cool if we take that next step. And that would be really in-depth stuff to help you guys get to where you want to go. Tali L. The Willie Wagtails in my veg patch are my favourite. You know what that is? The Willie Wagtail, they are one of my favourites as well. We don't have any. I said to Carl when we moved here, I said, we don't have any Willie Wagtails or finches here in our street or in our place. And I just love those guys. Used to sit on our little brick fence at the front where the letterbox was, and he'd wait up there and would fly out, grab something and come back, and he'd make this beautiful sound and be really close to you. It's just really friendly animal. Really loved it. So we're planting some different trees and shrubs and hedges and trying to get it right to get these smaller birds and the parrots and different things in, and create a new style of a dynamic of a variety of these animals coming in. We've already got lots of little skinks turning up and things like that. We've got noticed a green tree frog going off yesterday in the afternoon, and so it's starting to happen. It's just a matter of just time and just slowly building up the habitat and working with these amazing creatures to build a better, beautiful permaculture garden that regenerates over time and just gives back food over time. And actually, they become less and less work. They're very, at the beginning, they're more work, but over time, they become less and less work when you know how to manage them properly. And they become more and more productive. Talia cockatoos are the worst. Well, they can be quite destructive. I've seen them pull tiles off the top of roofs, and they're nature's pruners. They'll get in and prune the trees and things like that. But they're okay when there's just one or two. It's when they're in big flocks in certain areas they can be quite destructive. And as I said, I've seen them pull roof tiles of houses, which is pretty gnarly, right? But it's because they've taken away all their trees. It's just poor buggers. In some way, I feel a bit sorry for them. The mound would be great mulch. Yeah. So I'm into getting the arborists and just building big piles up around the place and try and get some more and build some big piles up and then just let it sit for a while. Chickens can go in there and play around in it, and then throw it out into the gardens and then have, like a pile sitting for a year and stuff like that, 3 or 4 months, and then using it for worm farming and building, scaling up and all that type of stuff. And generally, sometimes you can get it free. With Wongs in my garden, I can usually hear them talking before they start enjoying my figs, so I have a bit of warning time. Yeah, they probably do like those figs, I could imagine. As I said, they're good here for the snakes, so I'm happy to have them around. I don't mind them grabbing the odd tomato here or there, to be honest. But I try and hide the tomatoes. I've got some different ones growing, and they just can't see them. They seem to go for the yellow, the brighter yellow ones and the reds. They can stay away from the blacks and the pinks and things like that. So, yeah. Janine, our dog keeps the brush turkeys away, so they only walk through along the fence very early in the morning. Well, that's good because they can be super destructive. And because they're protected now, apparently they used to be pretty good eating, but they're protected and we can't eat them. But I've just got mini nightmares over them on my micro farm, doing like $50 worth of damage in about 30 seconds, because areas haven't been netted up on my microgreens mostly. Oh, bad memories. This is my father, Arthur Thomas Ware. Yeah, Mart, I'm watching. Mum took a look too. Great movie of the Chooks. Love it. Welcome, Dad. Dig, how are you, mate? Good to see you here. Thanks for dropping in to check out my show. If you're new to the show, then my name's Marty Ware, and you've come in later. I'm an agricultural horticulturist. We teach everything about worm farming, composting, building soil profiles, and regenerative practices here on my channel. Whether you're small or big, doesn't matter. It's all to do with scale, and you can do much the same. I've done it on small, tiny gardens, on verandas, small porch backyards, and now in this bigger space here where we're scaling up and reinventing ourselves into, well, not reinventing ourselves, we're just creating a bigger, better version of what we've had before in the past. And so, yeah, it's pretty exciting. And so we'll keep pulling over some comments here. If you've got any questions or something that you'd like to share about your regenerative space, your permaculture space, your potted plants, something to do with frogs, birds, animals, insects, destructive, good. We'd love to hear your stories here, and I'll keep sharing mine along the way. And if you've got any questions as well, feel free to fire away. We are only going for an hour today. I've got the Mullumbimby markets on today, so my daughter's waiting, Karen, for us to go there. So we've got nearly 15 minutes left, so a bit of time before we start to finish up. And so fire away with your questions, guys. Hi, Marty. I used to spoil my chooks. I chopped the iceberg lettuce really fine and they'd eat it like spaghetti. They made great pets, so tame. Yeah, we spoil our chickens too, right? But we don't overfeed them with grains. That's the biggest thing. It becomes a big expense and they don't need it all. And if you have a way to get them to eat more wild foods, and so be it. If you don't, then you have to supplement it with vegetable scraps and grains and things like that. But remember, in the olden days, they didn't feed them grains, they didn't have them round. They were the scrap and bug and pest removalists, and they always did a great job. And then they would become either a special dinner where we go, oh, we're having chicken tonight. They go, oh yes, all right. You give their chickens any names like we have, like Fatso and Brown One and Painful and all these different names that we've got for our chickens. But you know what I mean. Okay, we've got another one called Flighty, and she's a real pain in the bum. more pain in the bum than painful. And I think if we're going to eat any chickens, Flighty'd be the first one to go. Chicken nuggets, mate. She's really annoying sometimes. Sometimes I don't even think she's a chicken. She's so weird. Anyway, Tali Lee, we had 3 guinea pig fowls move in. They are wonderful. They eat bugs out of the garden. They don't eat the garden or scratch it up. I've heard great things about guinea fowl. I also hear that they clean up the ticks. They love ticks, and so they bring the tick problem down. And they're also good guard dogs, I hear. And we looked at getting some here, but I don't think we've got enough space for them. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And if anyone's got to want to do that, look into guinea fowls because they're pretty cool. Deborah Sutcliffe, g'day Marty. G'day Deborah, and hi to everyone in the chat. And hello from Mackay. Hello Lona, nice to see you here. Thanks so much for dropping in and coming to watch our video about regenerative homesteading and using these permaculture practices such as worm farming, composting, building up soils, using mulches and different things to build up soils. Now there is an image that I think I missed somewhere along here, so I'm going to have a quick snip through it, see if I can find it. There it is there. I don't think I've shown this one, but this is my bale garden. So this is another way that I regenerate my soils by putting the bales down. So any type of bale you can use. Just be careful, some of them have more seed in them than others. These ones, this is Soteria grass at the moment. We also use Soteria and sugarcane. And you let the bales cure over time, just get a bit wet and soggy, then start putting compost on them and plant small rooted, shallow rooted plants on top. And then as they start decomposing more, you can put bigger plants in, such as cucumbers, zucchinis, tomatoes, and things like that. And eventually it just dies down, and I'm going to plant papaya and do some different stuff into them, bigger plants in the near distant future. I've also had a worm farm connected to the end of it, and that's just been recently moved. So there's all compost worms all through that, and big earthworms coming up underneath and pulling that carbon back down. So they're coming up underneath from the ground, grabbing that material and they're from their burrows and taking it back down the ground. So they're building soil profiles underneath. So you think, oh, it's all on top, but actually half of it is down below as well. And it gets better and better as you throw the compost on the top and you plant more plants. So that's one of the systems. And if you check out my video about the regeneration videos, there's one here, it says it goes about 4 or 5 videos, goes about 45 minutes. That's the one you want to watch on. It's a mixture of the worm farming and this system put together. All right, the brush turkey mound. Yes, they are an amazing animal. They keep it at 28 degrees perfect the whole time, that mound. And there's some fungi and different things in there that you won't find in other mounds. You shouldn't really touch the mounds, but if there's a mound that's been dead for some reason or whatever, you can grab that and use that. And it's pretty good in the garden. Deborah Sutcliffe, worm farm question. We have foxtail palms. Can I use the leafy part of the fallen fronds in my worm farm if I just use the leafy butt cups? Fine. Yes, just chop it up really fine. No problem. What I do is I would chop it up a little bit first, let it sit outside for a little bit, get a bit of, just start to get a little bit of bacteria on it, and then throw it into the worm farms. And it'll great carbon source. For sure. I would just go with that. That sounds like a great plan to me. All right, Marty, how do you deal with rats? They're getting into the roof and chewing the wiring out in the car. I've had to put out poison baits. I hate poisons, but lost control of how to do it. Okay, so rats are a mammal. And so how I deal with mammals is chili powder. So anywhere where I know they're going around and sniffing around, they're creating any problems. Sometimes in these bales at the beginning when they were too close to the house. Now I'm pretty sure the neighbour's cat's taken out the rat, but I thought I think there was a couple of rats under the house when I moved in, or some mice, and I could see where they were grabbing some of the food and stuff out of the bale garden. And now they're gone, and I didn't have to chili powder them, but I was getting ready to chili powder them. So if you know that their nest is nearby or they've got to track somewhere to go somewhere, they'll always track in the spot where they can hide the most. And you've got to be consistent with the chili powder. So if they sniff it, they get it up their nose, they get it in their eyes. Mate, have you ever had chili powder in your eyes and nose? I'm telling you, it's not good. So, yeah, that's how I deal with them. Hopefully that helps. The other thing is one of those walking traps. It goes and it grabs them. So the bottom snips out, and they're in a box. And you can get them from different shops, places like that, and animal places and things for mice and rats. So that's another way to do it. Can you compost all types of packaging cardboards? There's some. You can compost all of them, but the best ones to stay away from are the ones with heavy paints and things on them and stuff like that. The sort of more natural browns and things, much better for in the worm farms and stuff. But you can compost everything. Some people don't, and will say no, don't. But I have in time composted some of that other stuff and found it to be okay. It just takes longer, and you just don't know a lot of the paints. You just don't know what's in it and stuff like that. So generally, those ones I'll put them into the green bin. Janine, we have so many frogs that go between our small ponds and the neighbour's pond. They are so loud when it rains, but it's amazing to hear them loving life in our garden. That's unreal. Now, if you've got frogs around, that means you've got a nice, healthy habitat. So congratulations to you, and my hat goes off to you. We've got big frog populations around. Not so much here because the place has been taken care of until I started moving in. Like I said, we've got a green tree frog turned up last night, whopping away. But my other space, but before here, my tiny little permaculture garden, so full of frogs, and I kept my mum awake all night from the gop, 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 gop. And there's one that sounds like a Sydney swamp mark frog, sounds like a dropping water, goes tock, 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 and it sounds like dripping water dripping on your head. If you don't zone out, man, they can do you in, I'm telling you. Renee C, does that work well with pumpkins, rock melons, and watermelons? Yes, works very well, these bale gardens. All those family work absolutely brilliant with them once they're cured and doing well. So check them out. I've got quite a lot of older content and new content about bale gardening. If you go into my channel and type in bale gardening and look at the recent permaculture regenerative ones, self-sufficient ones, the recent stuff. We've got the new way that I'm doing it. So here we go, Mrs. Wobbles. What is the smallest size of basil plants you get before I start harvesting? I like around about the fourth leaf. So if you get up to around about the fourth leaf, you can then start to harvest. But you can actually harvest second or third tendril, as long as you've got some little leaves coming out. Like it comes out the first one, there's little leaves coming out, that little branch there. You can take that top part. What I like to do with basil is sprout a whole lot at once in a pot or in a tray, like you're growing microgreens, and get them up to about yay high. And then I just keep a few because you can stick them in water and all types of stuff, and just chop the tops off. So I'm only just grabbing the tops, and I've got a whole big tray full, and then you just keep growing them that way. So yeah, tray a pot, heap of them at first, and just go for it. Yeah. And like I said, they take cuttings from water really easy, so you can just keep growing basil and basil on and on. And one of the ones, the perennial basil, is really cool. I've got to get some more of it, and that'll grow for years and just strike with water, no problem. And it's not bad eating either. Jesse Elliott, thanks for the chili powder advice. We live on a highway for ravenous possums. Yeah, well, I've done kangaroos with this stuff. Having to deal with possums, but I know I've advised many people with the possums, and you got to get them where they walk along the track, where they go in. So you got to watch them when they walk, and then you got to hit them up with that, and then you got to get them near the food source as well. So you make sure you pick it up. If it gets on their fur, they'll go, "What's that?" And then all of a sudden, there's a little bit in their eye, and they're like, "Oh man," I know it's a little bit cruel, but it's better than you losing your fruits and vegetables and things every day. It doesn't hurt them. They get over it, and they'll find somewhere else to go next week. Everything needs to be covered or it's gone in the morning. They do make gardening more expensive because they're netting. We'll give it a go. The chili isn't the perfect solution, but it does work, and you just got to be careful with rain and mist and water and fog and things like that. It dilutes it and stuff. So you got to put it out more regularly. You can also use hot pepper and stuff. So we've got 31 people watching now, 27 thumbs up. And today we've been talking about regenerative homesteading, regenerative farming, worm farming, chickens, composting, all this stuff to create better soils at home and regenerate your place. Now, if you've come in late, please watch the rerun a little bit later. We've got only a few minutes left to go. I'm going to start saying goodbye to the crew here. So what we do is we actually if you're new and you've just come into the community, say goodbye to your friends in the community, say goodbye to me. And what I do is then I drag it across to you all. As I said, we're just covering 1 hour today, off to the markets with my beautiful daughter, the Mullumbimby markets. And if you're watching this show and at your Mullumbimby markets, say good day to me. I'll be always happy to say hello. And what we do is I've got my favorite theme song. So give us a big thumbs up too before you go. Don't forget to do that if you're going to speed off right now. Remember, say goodbye. I'll put that across in the chat box. Let me know if you've been watching it right through this whole show in the comments box down below. I love hearing that for the people who watch that in the reruns. And if you've actually enjoyed the way that I've been introducing little bits of video, little bits, some imagery of what I'm doing, images of other people and things like that, and try and produce this show better and better every week. Saturday, 9 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne time. We come through, and then we have the odd video through the week and the odd sporadic live as well. Keep an eye out for some shorts and check out all the videos from the last month on the channel. Let's get the music going. Okay. To the river. Michael Shines.
To the river we go, leave our worries on the shore and drift away. On the river we know, sometimes the perfect words are never said. I spilled my coffee, I don't feel like talking, my worries just keep growing by the day. I need a moment where the green and blue appear, to spin a rock and watch the ricochet. To the river we go, leave our worries on the shore and drift away. On the river we know, sometimes the perfect words are left unsaid. You could change your mind when you're intertwined with the water and the waves. As I grow older, well, that boat I'll never sail. It works better than the pills the doctor gave. And with that old fishing pole, I still catch them by the bucketful. The kids are helping on the grill and sneak a taste. To the river we go, leave our worries on the shore and drift away. On the river we know, sometimes the perfect words are never said. You could change your mind when you're intertwined with the water and the waves. Find this place before you end your days, and if you see me out there, wave hello.
Oh, I just love that bit, last bit. And if you see me out there, say hello. And there's so much meaning in that video, in that song. That's why I use it as my theme song. It just nearly brings tears to my eyes. It's just something that's just so special to me, and I just want to share it with you all. Thank you so much for coming and watching the show. I'm actually a little bit emotional today because it's just been, we've been going through quite a lot in the last few years, and I'm here now in this amazing space, and I just can't believe I'm here being able to share this with you all. So before I shed a tear, I will say goodbye, and God bless to you all. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we'll see you at the next video and live show real soon. Bye for now. Love you.